Welcome back. We are at the finals of the Legacy Tour Huntsville, where Andrew Mays, playing Sultai Delver, is paired up against J.C. Goldman on Grixis Delver. I'm Zachary Cuck, your host, joined by my co-host, Christopher Cusera. Chris,
Hello again.
how do you feel about this matchup, Chris?
Oh, it was a great matchup. There's nothing like the Delver Mirror. Starting off turn 7 with one permanent on the field, no cards in hand. Oh, it's a great feeling.
That is the typical grind fest when Stifles and Thoughtseizes meet Wastelands and Tiny Creatures, right?
It's great.
Nobody can get an edge, or the edges that are gained are usually short-lived, at least. I gave Delver style decks a try for a while, especially the Sultai Delver variants, and I could not take it. I couldn't stand the mirror, and actually Delver alone was enough for me not to want to play those decks. I cannot stand a creature that's that unreliable.
Oh yeah.
Anything that goes from Fugitive Wizard some games to Wild Nikata with Wings the other games, and seemingly no control other than like a Brainstorm, it was too much. I couldn't deal with it. So that's why I switched over to Infect. I wanted all of my creatures to suck. Anyway, we are shuffling up here. Both players have slogged through 5 rounds of Swiss and won both their quarterfinal and semifinal matchups. We saw J.C. Goldman take down Chihoy Yim on Miracles in the last feature match. He's now got just one more round to see if he can take it all the way, or if Andrew, who's also had a very productive day, can claim the title of Legacy Champion at the Huntsville Legacy Tour. I believe Andrew is the higher seed, so he should have the option of player draw, but I'm not positive.
I think you're right about that. I think Andrew was our top seed.
Looks like an instant mulligan. I don't know that there was any land in that hand.
I think I might have seen like one Wasteland.
Which in the strictest sense, Wasteland is a land. However,
effectively, it's a spell that costs your land drop for the turn.
Almost all of the decks all of the cards in Delver decks are mana intensive and 1 or 2 mana. So typically your Wasteland can't actually cast much of anything. Maybe a Tarmogoyf for a Young Pyromancer, but outside of that, you don't actually have any spells that require generic colorless mana.
Yeah, Delver decks in general are very reliant on their colored mana. Wasteland very often is just another spell that doesn't flip a Delver.
Right, and in this case, it cost Andrew. If that had been, say, a Polluted Delta or something like that, it would probably have been a keepable hand. It looked like it had at least one Brainstorm or a Ponder, I think. And we didn't get a look at JC's hand, but it appears he's keeping. So, And I think actually that's worth noting too in these Delver matchup mirrors, because you have so much draw step control between Brainstorm and Ponder and sometimes Gitaxian Probe. It's not about who draws the more powerful or the better cards. It's just whoever has more cards, usually, who has a notable advantage. The only exception being if you either don't draw lands or you draw too many. Flood or Mana Screw can certainly sway a game, but typically both players will get enough of their resources to function. It's just whoever has more resources typically gets the game.
Yeah, and so many of the cards that you play in Delver decks are interchangeable with one another.
Yeah,
you've got cantrips, and you got creatures, and you got removal, and you got counterspells, and that's kind of it.
And actually, I think that's one of the big sideboarding strategies in the Delver-esque mirrors. Obviously, these aren't mirror decks. One is Grixis playing red, and the other one is Sultai with green spells. But they all have removal. Oof, looks like Andrew's going back to the pool once again here for
down to 5 now.
Mulligan to 5. That's brutal in these matchups.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate.
But anyway, as I was saying, the sideboard strategy is often to take any cards that are not at least 1-for-1s out and try to upgrade them. So cards like Force of Will and Daze occasionally will be removed in favor of either more removal or more creatures or things like Sylvan Library that can actually generate card advantage, because you're just so disadvantaged playing things like Force of Will when all of your cards are, like you said, just interchangeable.
Yeah, Daze is often a card that you'll keep on the play just because it's so much better there. You can Daze a turn 1 Delver or a removal spell for your Delver or what have you.
Right. In my experience, Daze is marginal.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
It's like you said, it's good at maintaining tempo. It is clearly a tempo-oriented card, but
when it's bad, it's very bad.
Yeah, it's terrible, and it's hard to maintain tempo in these matchups because, like we said, all the spells are cheap. So the tempo of a Daze has to be on turn 1, 2, maybe 3 if you're lucky, and it's hard to maintain the tempo anyway because like the removal eventually gets the job done, and really you just want more creatures if you can do it. Looks like we had a slight error there. Maybe Andrew saw the second card of his deck, and we were just randomizing it to
the unknown portion, just re-randomizing it.
And he did take his Scry off of the new Vancouver Mulligan rule. Andrew leads out with a Verdant Catacomb, but no play, and JC has.
It's often a dangerous play to have a Verdant Catacomb with no fetch land. I'm not sure if Andrew knows he's in an Delver Mirror, but if you are and your opponent has a turn 1 land into a Stifle,
sure,
that can often be a very, very damaging.
If I had to guess, it probably has something to do with a Brainstorm and no second land.
Potentially.
Where he wants to try and wait as long as he can to try and get maximum value out of the Brainstorm. That's another thing with these Delver Mirrors is your Brainstorms and Ponders flow freely because they're rarely going to be countered or fought over, but they have to do lots of work at improving your card quality.
You see him to Turok on Andrew's side,
which is probably one of the best cards he could have in his opening hand to try and gain back some of that lost advantage due to mulliganing to 5.
He had a Young Pyromancer and a Ponder.
Both great cards, yeah.
Definitely a very, very valuable hint to Turok there.
It's worth noting JC let out on his one of Tropical Island. I think it's only in the deck to activate Deathrite Shaman. I don't know if there's any sideboard cards, but typically you see the Grixis decks that run Deathrite only have Tropical Island as a sort of a concession to the fact that the green activated ability on Deathrite is useful, if not fantastic. A Wasteland takes out the Bayou from Andrew, and we see
looks like a Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, that's an altered Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah.
Appears to be Superman.
Gets a lightning bolted.
Although it's dead, so
no.
The Man of Steel has succumbed to lightning. The lightning rod of steel, as it were. And there's a Ponder for JC. Now, neither player has a distinct advantage yet, which is like we said, that you're not typically getting really far ahead on board because the cards just trade so well. But JC having a creature that survived a turn is noteworthy. And there's the namesake.
Yeah, being able to untap
Fugitive Wizard
with a Deathrite Shaman in these matches is a very, very good thing to have. JC's much, much further ahead on the board right now than Andrew is.
I wonder why JC chose to exile the land with Deathrite Shaman instead of using his Polluted Delta. I wonder if that means that there's another card from that Ponder that he's interested in drawing.
Yeah, it's not unlikely that he left a spell on top so that he can flip the Delver next turn.
That's a good call. I didn't even think of that. That's right. He knows that this is a guaranteed flip if it's a spell, and that's worth preserving.
It's also often better, less so against an Abrupt Decay deck, but it's also often better to have the Deathrite Shaman be the land that you used, because removing the Deathrite Shaman later gets worse.
So Andrew Thoughtseizes and takes the Force of Will
over Gitaxian Probe. Looks like that was a flip Delver. I didn't quite catch the card he flipped there.
Was it a Daze?
I think it was blue, but I'm not totally sure which spell it was.
Well, in any event,
there's kind of a lot of blue cards in Delver decks.
JC is going to send with both the Elf and his Insectile cohort.
Interesting play. He may have something he wants to do on Andrew's turn with that mana.
Sure. I wish we knew what the spell that he played was. He also chose not to cast the Gitaxian Probe.
Probably saving that for a young Pyromancer if you can find it.
It does pair well with the Pyromancer.
It's also a less useful card you can pitch to Force of Will.
That's true.
Later down the line.
And I guess there's no reason to. He doesn't need to dig for anything in specific. He's
definitely in the commanding position.
Pretty commanding position. He has 4 times as many permanents as Andrew, which is saying a lot in a Delver Mirror. That he really doesn't have to act until Andrew makes him.
Andrew, you're dropping the ball here. Your opponent has permanents.
That's how it goes, I guess. That mulligan to 5 is really costing him here, obviously. But even so, he would need maybe a Deathrite Shaman and an Abrupt Decay to sort of claw back into this. I'm not sure what else. I see an Abrupt Decay there.
Being allowed to untap with a Deathrite Shaman would definitely be a huge help to him here.
The other important thing to be aware of with Delver matchups, especially, is that Delver Secrets is a very strong clock.
It is.
At 3 power, it ends the game. You might think, well, that's a 7. That gives the player 7 turns to respond. But in Legacy, that's rarely the case. Between your fetch lands and your Force of Wills and so on, you take enough incidental damage that typically it's only about 5 turns for a Delver Secrets. And if you look right now, the combination of Delver Secrets and Deathrite Shaman has Andrew down to just a 3-turn clock.
You see some of that incidental life loss you were talking about, the Gitaxian Probe.
Yep. Now, JC has a lot of life to play with, so it's okay. And we see a hand of Ponder and Force of Will. Yeah, this Force of Will is terrible in this situation. Like, there's no way he wants to use that with that Ponder.
The other unfortunate thing here is that Andrew finally does have that Deathrite Shaman we were talking about, but JC can simply leave his untapped to deny him the mana that he would have with that. So
Right.
if Andrew attempts to exile a land with his Deathrite Shaman, JC can exile it in response and deny him that mana.
Yeah,
even if JC doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal. The way the dueling Deathrites, I guess, how they sort of work against each other, and it becomes a blink. What do they call it? A staring contest. See who blinks first, because in order to get your Deathrite to work, you have to get your opponent to tap his first. Now we fetched a Underground Sea on JC's side, so presumably he has a black spell he wants to cast. Maybe a Cabal Therapy. He saw Andrew's hand. Nope, looks like he's just going to go ahead and activate his Deathrite to deal damage, while Andrew's Deathrite still has Summoning Sickness and can't interfere.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that means JC doesn't have a lot going on, but is planning to just be, incredibly aggressive. And that, that gets the job done. Andrew only has 8 life left.
Even if Andrew doesn't lose himself any more life, that Delver's a 3-turn clock now.
Right.
If he was at 10 life, it could deal 3 damage, and Andrew would still have 1 life left.
Oh, and the Liliana of the
That
Veil.
does open up the door for the Liliana.
Now, you don't see Liliana.
Oh, the days.
Now he knows he's got a Force of Will.
Yeah, he has a Force, but that would leave him hellbent.
Man, that is an expensive Force of Will.
That is
Countering a daze with a Force is about as bad as it can feel.
Oh yeah.
I imagine he's going to go for it here because he doesn't really have a lot of options.
That Force is unfortunately getting no better.
Yeah, and if the Lily resolves, he's gonna be stripping his own hand anyway. Yeah, so now JC can get rid of that get rid of the Liliana with his Delver if he wants, or actually he could probably just ignore it. Andrew's on enough of a clock that he has to come up with answers now.
Yeah, so JC is playing Landing Bolts in his deck, we saw earlier, so if he can find one of those, he can answer the Liliana of the Veil.
He can also just finish Andrew off. Andrew's only at 5 life.
That's true as well.
I don't know how much longer
he can
hold out.
I was gonna make the point that after Andrew ticks Lily up one more time, it'll be able to edict the Delver away, but he'll get another hit in the meantime, and that Lightning Bolt would just win the game.
Now it looks like his draw was a second Liliana of the Veil. I think that he flashed that when he went to exile that land. I don't know what JC is considering.
Yeah, he doesn't have a Deathrite. What he could do is stifle that.
Oh, he could stifle the man. Although if he has a stifle, it would be even better used on the Liliana.
Stifle the edicts. Oof.
Not sure what. Maybe JC sniffed it out. Like, why else would he need the mana?
He's gonna show a Force of Will. I don't know if he has another card.
He's not Force of Willing.
So he's gonna decide not to Force of Will it.
Oh,
and then stifle.
there's the stifle. Yeah. I think you could almost tell that was coming because
Yeah.
of the response to the Deathrite Shaman. Yeah, that Wasteland was exiled. But oh, yeah, that's backbreaking. He still has the Force of Will available if he finds a blue card.
Mm-hmm.
The Death or the not Deathrite. I don't know if I like this. I think I might have just held the Ponder. Because
it would depend. It would depend what else he has in hand. I think.
well, we know he has a Force of Will.
Yeah.
And that alone. Although I guess with Liliana on the table, he can't keep the Force of Will.
Keeping a Force of Will in a blue card is not going to be an easy thing to do.
Oy, and there's another Wasteland. Cut him off of green mana.
Yeah.
So he can't gain life. He has barely any mana to work with, and this Delver Seekers may just go the distance unless
Yeah, Andrew could cast
an Abrupt Decay.
Abrupt Decay or a Tarmogoyf here, but Tarmogoyf wouldn't get anywhere.
Looks like I don't know what he drew, but it wasn't an answer to the
Yeah.
insectile aberration. And JC wins this game convincingly.
Very much so. Although I'm not sure how much it was the deck as much as that mulligan.
That mulligan was
did
brutal.
Andrew.
No argument there. Anyway, we're going to take a minute to talk about our sponsor for this event and the host store, JC's House of Cards. JC's House of Cards is located out in Madison, Alabama. They have a huge supply of singles for all the formats, you name it. Legacy, a very, very impressive Legacy
Absolutely.
collection. But also standard and modern staples and anything you need to build those decks, JC's has got it. They carry all of the other ancillary products like sleeves, deck boxes, binders, all that kind of stuff. So if you need Magic supplies, or if you need non-Magic supplies, some of the miniatures and other card games like Force of Will and so on, I know he carries all of that. JC's House of Cards in Madison has it all. You can find them on Facebook at JC's House of Cards.
Very, very impressive stock there for how new the store is.
Yeah, I played an FNM out there, the modern one, that had a pretty good turnout. Had a lot of fun. I like the store. I like the store owner. Just a great atmosphere.
So players are moving on to sideboarding. You want to start us off?
Yeah, so I've got JC's sideboard over here. It looks like he's got 3 Cabal Therapies, a Grafdigger's Cage, a Null Rod, a Spell Pierce, a Flusterstorm, a One of Massacre, that's a strange one, a Fork Bolt, Parapyroblasts, an Ancient Grudge, 2 Surgical Extractions, and a Pithing Needle. I think it's likely that he brings in some number of the Cabal Therapies. I think those are good. Probably the Spell Pierce and Flusterstorm, simply because he wants to take Force of Wills out.
Probably.
Like they're not great counterspells, but they're definitely better than Force.
Generally.
Forked Bolt is great at answering opposing creatures. The more removal you have, the better. Same thing with Pyroblast. It deals with
Spell that kills a Delver.
Yeah, it kills Delvers, and it also can deal with like Ponders, Brainstorms, that kind of thing. I don't think anything else though. Surgical is too narrow. Pithing Needle doesn't stop anything relevant. Null Rod and Grafdigger's Cage are pretty much irrelevant in this matchup.
You could probably make an argument for Pithing Needle to stop either the Deathrite Shaman if Andrew has one and JC doesn't, or for the Liliana's Veil, but
it
I'm not sure
still feels a little narrow.
definitely.
But in any event, he'll probably be bringing out the Forces, maybe the Dazes, and leaving in all of the business spells, the cantrips, and the removal. What about Andrew?
I've got Andrew's here. He's got a Submerge. I'd expect him. That's a brutal tempo play.
Yeah.
A fantastic play you can make with that one. Spell Pierce as well, like you said, just much better than a Force of Will. Maelstrom Pulse, additional removal, could probably come in. It also answers the Young Pyromancer tokens that I'm not sure we saw the first game,
Right.
but we do know that are in JC's deck. Sylvan Library is often a great card for slower matchups. Not sure if he'd bring it in here, but it definitely
It is
could
card
get him
advantage. That's
yeah,
worth
it
noting.
can definitely give him some card advantage. Vendilion Click. What do you think about this one? Do you like this one? Did you bring it in?
More creatures is better in the Delver matchup. I think the most important cards are threats and answers, and that's a threat.
I would agree.
Same thing with Dark Confidant.
It can be expensive, but it's a pre-flip Delver. It's